So Christina Raddish with Keller Williams Riverside. It is Riverside, right? Or
Yes.
yeah, yeah. Well, thank you for spending time with me with the because I know realtors are getting busy nowadays with
hmm
the interest rate fluctuating and whatnot. And how's that working out for you guys with the interest rate just going up and down?
I think with the interest rate going up and down, because a lot of people are thinking about the COVID market. They're like, oh, well, I'm not going to get an interest rate that low, or they're trying to time it based on interest rates. And I think with it going up and down so much, it's kind of proving the point of you shouldn't time the market. You should just time yourself and when you're ready, because the interest
Yeah.
rates are the most fleeting part of the market. But your house and the quality and the negotiations that you might have, depending on the type of the market, that's something that we could lean in more to besides the interest rates, because you can always refinance. So I think with it fluctuating, it's just kind of proving that point a little bit more that this is a long-term investment and the interest
Mm.
rates are just where they're at.
Have you guys had any pushback on buyers? Like, yeah, we hear that a lot, and we're just not ready yet. Like, how do you guys navigate over that?
Well, not everybody is ready. Honestly, it's going to depend on your personal situation. So I just ask more questions. Like, I just want to see where they're coming from, because not everybody is going to be ready just because the interest rates are great. Maybe their credit needs to get some work, or maybe they just got a lot of debt and they're trying to clear that off, or they're going through a lot personally too. So I just like to ask more questions, because everybody's timeline is going to be a little differently.
Mm.
And, I'm not all about the commission. I'm all about like making sure it makes the most sense for my client. And so I'm going to be sticking around for the long term. So whenever they are ready, which may be in a year or two, I have a client right now that was I had a consultation with them 4 years ago, and now we're actively house hunting because they did the work to get themselves prepared. So it's
Mm.
all about your personal timing and just asking the right questions.
Mm. Cool, cool. So tell the audience, who is Christina Radish? What's your background? What got you into real estate?
So I grew up in the Inland Empire. I grew up in Fontana. I eventually went to UC Davis and got my bachelor's in psychology. And after
Mm.
that, I was doing a lot of jobs in psychology. So I was doing behavioral therapy with children. I did behavioral therapy with adults. I did community health work at Arrowhead Regional Medical Center, which is a community hospital in Colton, like San Bernardino, Colton area.
Mm-hmm.
And I just noticed that a lot of my patients were homeless. Like, to get into the program that I was a part of, you had to have three different things. You had to have a physical chronic condition, you had to have a behavioral health chronic condition, and you also had to have a chronic community need. So, for example, you'd be like hypertension, bipolar, and homeless, or you had diabetes, schizophrenia, and food scarcity, or something like that. But you had to have like a trifecta. And so a lot of my patients were homeless, and it was just absolutely ridiculous. Like, a lot of them would get a Section 8 voucher, but then couldn't find any housing because of the inventory shortage, which was foreshadowing, because I did not realize there was inventory shortage and just regular buying and selling. Like, I was like, oh, this is just a broken record at this point. But I got into it because I was just getting so frustrated. Like, I would call the Department of Homelessness, and then they would say, well, did you call 211, which is the resource hotline? If nobody knew that, like, you can call 211, and it's kind of like calling 411 back in the day. And so I would call them, and they'd be like, well, then call the Department of Homelessness. And I was just like in this loop of like nobody being helpful. And basically, it was just a lot of bureaucracy. I'm sure there's people in those industries that actually help, but I wasn't getting that response. I was getting the bureaucratic like
Mm.
loop of like, you go here, and there was no answers. And so that didn't help my patients at all. And I was like, you know what? If I get into real estate, I can just be a wealthy philanthropist. I could do whatever I want with my money. And there's people who would advise, like, oh, you don't want to do that or whatever, but I can do whatever I want with my money. And real estate has an uncapped ceiling. And so I got into real estate thinking eventually I'm going to have Section 8 housing or subsidized housing. I would love to have rental properties where they're rent to own, and give people opportunities to build that generational wealth that can't necessarily qualify for a traditional loan, or maybe have a harder time qualifying for it, but still want to make that step forward, just because there were so many people that I couldn't help. And so going this avenue with the background that I have, that's the purpose and the why that I have with real estate. So it just kind of all made sense to do that.
So that's what made you get into real estate?
Yeah. So a
So
lot of
then,
people are like, I like looking at houses, or like, or just different things. And it's like, that's probably the part that I like the least about it, because I also like negotiations. I like contracts. I like teaching people to know what they're reading and things like that. I like empowering people. And
mm,
that's my main thing, like also empowering people to eventually own property, like if it was a rent to own situation, or to empower people to have resources that they can actually go for if they needed subsidized housing temporarily. Because that's the other thing. Like, I would love to partner with like Loma Linda University eventually, or just other programs that, do have this driving force to try and resolve homelessness and things like that, and to partner with them to create programs where Section 8 housing isn't a long-term solution. You do graduate out of it, and like eventually who needs it can go back into it, because that's also the problem, where it's kind of a broken system where if you're paying $900 a month for a house that could be rented out for $3,000 a month, what incentive do you have to leave? Like, I would just stay there if I could and pay 900
right.
bucks a month in rent. And so it doesn't really empower people to make the initiative to do better. Like, there's better out there. Like, yeah, it's cheap rent, but you could also be doing better for yourself too. So I think just creating resources and programs and initiatives to do that, and having a money making engine that is real estate, where it's uncapped. It's just however much I want to work. It's however many hours I want to put in. It's however I want to spend the money. Like, that was what was the most appealing thing about real estate specifically.
Mm. And people do graduate from Section 8? Do they really? They don't, huh?
I mean, of course there are, but there's no like timeline for them. You know what I mean? Like, it's just kind of like if they keep paying the rent and the landlord's having them there, there's some situations where it's awful, and not even just Section 8, but just renters in general, where the landlord needs to sell the property and now they're screwed all over again and they have to go try and find something. Like, for example, I had a client who, she reached out to me and she was paying like $1,900 a month for, it was like a 4 or 5 bedroom home in Fontana. And she's like, oh
Wow.
my gosh, because her landlord was selling the property. She had been renting there like devotedly for like the last 10 years, always making her payment on time, had a great relationship with the landlord, but the landlord passed. And now the landlord's kids were selling the
Mhm.
properties and they don't give a crap like about that relationship. They don't know that relationship. And so she was like, I can't find anything for rent like less than $3,500. And like, that is just such a payment shock for people. So that kind of stuff happens. And it just leaves people really unprepared for what's next.
Mm. And what is next? Homelessness back again?
Either homelessness, couch surfing, which is a type of homelessness, moving farther away just to make your budget work, but then that means longer commutes. You're probably not at home as often as you used to be, especially if you have a family. That could be really hard. I know growing up, a lot of my friends, including me, like our parents were exhausted by the end of the day
Mm.
just because of how hard they were working and the commute that they had. And
Mhm.
so it just puts a strain. And then also, like, you're probably still not going to find something 1,900 bucks that the
Mm-mm.
size of the house that you needed that you had before. So it's a lot of compromises and a lot of being uncomfortable, especially if you weren't taking advantage and saving up to try and buy something. So that way that didn't happen to you next time. Like, you don't have to rely on a landlord just like keeping you there.
Wow. So so that's what inspired you to get into real estate, to eventually invest in properties, and you yourself become a Section 8 landlord. Am I correct? Or
Yes, and to eventually sell those properties to those clients or to those renters, so that way they didn't have to worry about that. Like, I don't want to be an investor and just hold
okay.
on to all of my properties. I'm sure there's going to be some properties that are going to be near and dear to my heart that I don't want to necessarily let go of, but there's going to be specific properties where a renter goes in and we have the
Mm.
understanding that they're going to want to eventually buy this property and take it away from my ownership. Like, they're going to be the owners from now on. And just kind of cycling through that. It's kind of like
Mm.
the Dream for All program where
Got it.
California is giving that 20% down payment. When those clients sell that house, they got to give that 20% down payment back plus 20% in equity, but to continue fueling that project. And so
Mm.
it has its pros and cons like everything else, but it does give an allocation of funds to continue helping people in that way.
Mm. So you have a purpose in real estate with your um degree in psychology. So you do want to make a difference in people's lives as opposed to any other realtor that I talk to that tell me that they want to help their people. In reality, based on their lifestyle and everything that they do, I don't see that as genuine as I see it with you because
Mhm.
there's no there's no long-term goal. So, do you talk to these people that are in Section 8 and do you tell them the advantages of investing in real estate and what do they say?
All the time. Not necessarily just Section 8, but just renters in general. That it's like, hey, like I get this phone call all the time.
Mhm.
Like you're not the only one that gets into this situation where you're kind of stuck because you have such a low monthly payment that you're fearful of going somewhere else. And honestly, owning initially is more expensive than renting because it's probably going to be a little bit higher than what you could rent the property for. But in 4 or 5 years' time, your mortgage payment is going to be enviable because the rent is going to be higher. Like both will
Right.
go up eventually, but at least your monthly payment is fixed. And at least you're paying down on something because I rented, I mean, and everybody's in their own situation. Not everybody can buy. So before I got into real estate, we were renting in downtown Riverside in a duplex. Super cute place. Loved my landlord. It was really fun living in downtown. Our rent was like $1,200, went up to $1,300 eventually. And I did the math, and it was like $70,000 that I had paid my landlord that I was not going to get back at the end of the day, except
No.
my $900 deposit, which was the initial rent that I had. Yeah, the initial rent that I had. And so it's like, but
Wow.
in, yeah. And then it was crazy too, because when I moved out, because we were rent capped, when I moved out, the rent went up to 2,100 and my mortgage payment is 2,150. And I remember my mom being like, "Oh my gosh, like that's so expensive. How much did you pay for your house?" Like blah blah blah. Like all the people that bought like a
Right.
long time ago that think it's
Mhm.
wild to be in the market that we're in right now.
Yeah.
But someone would kill me to have a 2,150 payment at the moment because right now it's like 3,000 and up. So it's like it's all about perspective and long term.
Well, my mortgage payment is 2,700.
Hmm.
Yeah. So
But you
it
have a bigger house than me too, right? Like, how big's your house?
1,200.
Yeah,
Well,
and you like
we
live in, I don't
we
want to say
bought
the city if you don't really want to know where you
no, I
live.
live everybody knows where I live. I live in
Okay.
Lake Elsinore. I live in Lake Elsinore, the most beautiful city in
Hmm.
Southern California. I don't care what anybody
Underrated,
says.
honestly. It's so gorgeous. I love the mountains. I love the lake. Like, it's really, really nice.
Well, Lake Elsinore, it's so centralized to any direction you wanna go to on a weekend.
Hmm.
You wanna go to Palm Springs? You're about an hour and a half. You wanna go to San Diego? You're about an hour and a half. You wanna go to LA? It's about an hour and a half. You wanna go to
Hmm.
Orange County? It's about an hour if you cross depending on where in Orange County, you just cross the 74 and
Hmm.
you're there. Victoria Gardens is about another 40 minutes. So
Hmm.
it's very centralized to any direction. When I say weekends, I mean no traffic, right? But
Hmm. Right.
but if you add traffic, just add another 20 minutes, which is still not a huge difference because of the direction that you wanna go.
Hmm.
That makes
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah,
So
exactly. And that's
no
what's great about the Inland Empire in general is because of that location. Like it's
right.
still the bang for your buck in Southern California. Like the locals wouldn't say that. The locals would be like, ah, like everything is getting so expensive. But if you're coming from LA, Orange County, or San Diego, we're the bang for your buck in Southern California. And you're still close enough to everything to where you can go and do them if you really want to.
People will get used to it.
Mm-hmm.
People will get used to it. They start loving their house. I mean, a
Mm-hmm.
$800,000 house in Rancho is a lot more spacious than an $800,000 in San Fernando Valley, San Gabriel
Mm-hmm.
Valley. They're very, very small. I inspected a home in Culver City, and it was a two-bedroom, one bath, not even 1,000 square feet. It was 1.2 million.
My house that you inspected in Mentone was 900 and I want to say like 950, 980 square feet, two bed, one
Uh-huh.
bath, 375.
Yes.
It's
So
like, oh my gosh.
no, but your house, because I inspected your house is well planned. This
Mm-hmm.
home was built in the 1920s, so it wasn't a square like yours. This thing was
Mm-hmm.
long. So the
Um,
hallway was very narrow. It,
mm-hmm.
it wasn't made for today's body types, right? Everybody everybody walked back in the 1920s.
Yeah.
So so that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. No, I live in Lake Elsinore and my mortgage is 2,700. When we bought
Mm-hmm.
the house, we bought it for 127,000 in '08. My mortgage was $800. Okay.
Oh man. But see, it's the long-term investment of it because
And
like with your payment, you probably refinanced,
we
right?
did. We
Like,
did. We
yeah.
we refinanced it twice. Not
Mm-hmm.
because we needed to. It's because some family events, it was a necessity for us to refinance because
Mm-hmm.
we had to do a lot of title changes. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
so that's the only reason. Other than that, I would have never refinanced. Come on, $800 a month.
Mm-hmm.
That's yeah, yeah. No, so that's pretty cool. So you work with a lot of first time home buyers.
Oh yeah.
And what is Christina's process of talking to these home buyers, uh, new time home buyers? Because tomorrow I'm going to be in the high desert talking to a group of home buyers, along with a lot of realtors and property management.
Mhm.
But they all seem to say the same thing. But I know that you, in particular, are very successful with first time buyers. What's your secret sauce?
Well, what are they all telling you that's the same? Just so I can kind of see what their mindset is, because that's the first thing I go for is what's their mindset, like what's their why? Because a lot of first-time home buyers, not every first-time home buyer, but a lot of them are millennials, which they're
Yes.
between like 30 and 40-ish years old. And we all remember the 2008 housing market crash. Like we weren't old enough to have had property and experience it, but we saw our parents going through it. So it's just really scary, especially when you have parents that are like, be careful, like, and they're like trying to look out for you. So, what are the main concerns that you come across with first time home buyers?
When I come across the main concern, when it's a lot of factors. The credit is not there. The credit
Mm-hmm,
is there, but not the income.
mm-hmm,
The credit is there, the income is there, but the credit history is not there.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Credit
So
history,
qualifying, really?
income, the
Like, are they
qualifying.
like the millennials or the people that are like, it's so unaffordable to buy a home, basically?
Well, a lot of them are not even millennials. A lot of them
Mm-hmm,
are like in my generation. I'm 50 years old, like in my generation,
mm-hmm,
and they've never had homes. They were either in the military, so they would travel around a lot. So
mm-hmm,
until they finish their military, that's one thing. Um, a lot of times are they went through a family event like a divorce.
mm-hmm,
So there was a lot of setbacks, but they became new first time home buyers,
mm-hmm,
and a lot of them get very excited. A lot of them don't, but most of the houses that I've been inspecting, and then I talk to realtors, something always comes up that throws the process into left field because something came up in their
mm-hmm,
first time home buyers. They get discouraged.
mm-hmm.
They get
I could
discouraged.
definitely, yeah, I could definitely see that. So with my first time home buyers, no matter what their age range is, even if they've bought property before, honestly, and they're not first time home buyers, any first time home buyer is someone who hasn't owned property in the last 3 years. But even if
Mm.
they're selling and buying, I have an in depth buyer's consultation with them. So I go over the whole process. I go over the home buying do's and don'ts because that's not necessarily really easy to Google, like things that'll end up hurting you, like financing anything new, because getting pre approved is such a delicate mathematical formula, co signing on anybody. Um, just a lot of different things that people might not know about. I go over resources like down payment assistance and the pros and cons with that because a lot of people think like, oh, down payment assistance is like free money, and it's quite not. There's a lot of cons when it comes to down payment assistance, but I have clients where it works really well for them. It gets their foot in the door. And last year, you actually did the home inspection for me. My clients got down payment assistance, got enough closing costs credit from the seller to where their out of pocket cost was 1,800 bucks to
That's
buy their
it.
house. That's it. That's less than a deposit you can get for rent and everything like that in today's world. And so there are situations where if you're educated about the process and like you trust me, then I'm going to take care of you. So it's a
Mm.
lot of dispelling any fears. A lot of people got to make compromises too, quite honestly. Like, I feel like it's like, oh, like for example me, like, oh, I can't buy a house in Fontana, it's too expensive. And it's like, well, yeah, like Fontana 30 years ago when our parents bought it was not the Fontana that it is today. It has come a long way. And so yeah, we are getting pushed out to other areas, but that was basically Fontana 30 years ago. Like Mentone looks like Fontana 30 years ago because it's a lot of orange groves, it's really rural, it's not like it's just an up and coming neighborhood, and that's kind of the bread and butter that like first time homebuyers end up going towards, because that also gives you the most growth opportunities too. Like all these neighborhoods like Mentone, Ukaipa, Banning, San Jacinto, Hemet, the high desert is a wonderful place to invest because not only is it affordable, but there's a lot going up there. Like there's a lot of infrastructure in the sense of like the highways, the bullet train going to Las Vegas. Now the Raiders are in Vegas. There's a lot of warehouses and like jobs going up to the high desert, to where a lot of the people that moved to the high desert and had to commute down the hill, now they might not have to. Now they can probably just live up in the high desert and be okay. And it's just come a long way when it comes to development. So I think it's also just kind of getting out of the fixed mindset that you have to buy where you grew up, because that's often not the case. A lot of my friends and family who bought in Fontana, I'm a Fontana native. So like my grandparents came from West Virginia because of Kaiser Steel and bought in Fontana, like back in like the 60s.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a little bit different, but I had a lot of friends and family who were moving from LA to Fontana. And if you were moving from LA to Fontana, it was like, where in the hell was that at? Like, I have no idea. Fontucky, or like, like now it's Fontalahara, like all these things. So it's like,
Did you
it's
just say?
different.
Did you just say Fontalahara?
Yeah, you've never heard that before?
Never.
Oh, that's one of my favorite nicknames. So it's
It,
it's way
it
different.
makes it makes perfect sense. Fontalahara. I've
Yeah, and
never
it's
heard
just
that
so
before.
different. It's so different
Oh
than what
my
it was before.
god,
So it's like,
that's funny.
you got to get out of the mindset of like, I need to buy where I grew up, because like it doesn't normally work like that, especially in California. Like you see what a great long-term investment buying in California is. Like, yes, it's expensive, but doesn't that make it an even better investment? Like, doesn't that show that your investment's going to grow in value over time? So it's like, things stay
Yeah.
cheap for a reason sometimes.
Well, also, I mean, okay, so a lot of times you cannot afford in this, even if you want to, it's different. In the places you can afford, you don't want to live. So let's say me here in Lake Elsinore, right? Or you're in
Mhm,
Fontana. Okay, yeah, I want to buy in Fontana, and you're adamant. I grew up in Fontana. I want to buy in Fontana, but you can't afford the places where you want to live in Fontana, the area, the zip codes.
mhm,
Lake Elsinore has a beautiful area called Tuscany Hills. Beautiful,
mhm.
beautiful area. Way different than where I live. You
Mhm.
know, where I live in Lake Elsinore, but I live in the unincorporated area, which means no street lights, no sidewalks, none of
Mhm.
that. Okay.
Mhm.
No, nobody comes to our street. Trick or treaters, nobody,
Same.
nobody, nobody. So after talking to your first time home buyers and you explained the situation, um, what makes a successful transaction? Like, what makes it? Is it the prospective home buyer being responsive to all the paperwork that they need to submit? Like, what makes it a successful transaction?
So having the buyer's consultation, so literally dispelling any myths that they might have, answering any questions that they have, setting up their expectations for what the market is and what the market usually trends long term, because there is no crystal ball. No one can say for sure what's going to happen. But if you look at the historical trends of data for real estate, we have a good idea of how it usually ends up turning out. Then from there, before they even start looking at houses, they need to get pre-approved with the lender, because that's going to get all their numbers in a row. And the lenders that I work with do such a good job of doing the work up front, because there's
Hmm.
lenders out there that are just like, and I don't even blame them. I don't want to say that they're lazy or anything like that, but lenders, just like realtors, don't get paid until the end of escrow.
Right.
So a lot of lenders will just take what you give them. Like they're like, okay, you told me you make like 100,000 a year, and you told me this is all your debt that you have, and like XYZ or whatever. But then when it comes to the part where they get into escrow and now they have to vet all of this information, it's not as clear cut, or it's not exactly what the borrower was saying. And like,
Right.
not even to blame the borrower either. Sometimes you just don't realize certain pieces of information that the lender is going to look at. And so I work with lenders that before we even get into escrow, they're vetting the information that you're giving them. So that way they know exactly what your situation is. They get you an approval standpoint. They give you your price point that you're approved for. So say it's you're pre-approved for 500,000. They give you your monthly budget. So it's like, okay, 500,000 equals, I don't know, like 3,500 in your monthly payment. And then from there, like we know all of the numbers from the very beginning. Like we know exactly what your down payment is going to be if you're not using down payment assistance. We know exactly what your closing cost fees are going to be. And if I need to negotiate any with the seller, like there's a lot of my first time home buyers can scrape enough for the down payment, but they run out of funds when it comes to the closing costs. So that means for me, I know I have to write in that the seller needs to credit closing costs on every single offer that we write. Like it's just not a no, it's not a negotiable thing. And so I tell my clients when they're in that situation, it's like real estate, it's not just about finding the right house, it's also about finding the right seller. Because as long as we don't compromise on the most important things, you're going to get all of the most important things. So just because you fall in love with a house doesn't mean that it's going to work out, because what if they get better offers? What if the seller's just an a-hole and doesn't want to give closing cost credit and there are no other offers on the table? I had that so much last year in the
Really?
winter months. Like I was the only offer on the table for a listing that sat for 100 days, and they're like, I think something better might come along. And we weren't even lowballing them or anything. We did the listed price and just asked for closing costs. And so it's just things like that where it's like you can't control that. So it's like as long as we're sticking to our intentions of what you need at the end of the day, like you need a good quality home in the neighborhood that you're willing to buy in. So if that's a compromise or if that's exactly where you want to be, we're only focusing there. And then just making sure that you get everything that you need in the offer too, because I've also worked with lenders where they don't tell them what they need for cash to close. And like I had a client, you did their home inspection too in Banning and Sun Lakes, where the lender didn't tell them the funds that they needed to close, or probably only sent it in paperwork but never verbally told them what they needed. And we're shocked to find out that they didn't need $6,000 to wire to escrow. They needed $19,000 to wire to escrow. And we found this out when they were signing with the notary. So it's like literally the day before we're supposed to close. And so thankfully, they were able to get a gift from a family member who had it in a bank account. But by golly, Miss Molly, like it's like, how do we get this? Like it's like, oh my gosh. And so that's why I have my trusted lenders, where we know exactly how things work and there's no surprises and there's no drama, there's no anything like that, you know. And I just think like being so transparent and communicative, it's gonna work out. And
So
sometimes, you know, we have that conversation and they need some time to prepare themselves.
so was this a lender that they had used, that they brought in?
Yes. So I had told them, I was like, hey, like I have lenders that I would recommend. Like I don't get anything from my lenders. Like I don't get a kickback or anything like that. I just am able to sleep at night because I know
What
they're getting taken care of and I
what
know I
what
can trust this lender. This
what
one, they were like, oh, but she's been working with us so long and like she helped us get our credit up and she's really great. And Honestly, she was a great lender, except that like she had a lot of personal things going on in the middle of that transaction, like
Right.
awful timing, just perfect storm timing kind of thing. And my clients just not being as absorbing of the information as she thought they were. And it was just this huge, huge, huge mess. And like because I didn't have that relationship with her as a lender, she wasn't giving me the insight that I needed as a realtor too to really help them out or really help that like stick in them like what their number was going to need to be. So like I don't like to play any games. Like we are not getting to the signing table and you don't know what you need to close kind of thing.
That's the thing, Christina, and this is what I always tell whenever I talk to people, whether I'm at family gatherings or whatever, is you need to work with a realtor that has a good team of full time professionals. Because I remember driving to Banning actually or Bowman, can't remember. We were driving with a friend of mine, and she was talking to a lender. Um, we were driving to, gosh, no, Ukaipa, no, not Ukaipa, Yucca Valley. Okay, so we
Mm-hmm.
had that long drive, and she was talking. She was texting this lender that her buyer had brought in, right? And she's like, "Well, I need to call you. I need to talk to you." And they got on the phone. The first thing that the lender said when she got on the phone was, "I have 10 minutes because I'm on my break." She had a job. Nothing wrong, but if you're gonna
Yeah.
work, if and these are the things and it was another nightmare of transaction
Mm,
because not that they don't know what they're doing, is that they don't have the complete information, and you don't
mm,
want your clients to come up with $19,000 at the day before the transaction when they're notarizing paperwork. I mean,
mhm,
that's not good. So I always tell
mhm,
people, wherever I'm at, work with the people that your realtor recommends. Okay.
mhm,
They're gonna have 2, 3 lenders because it's like when you go buy a car, okay?
mhm,
Bank of America will not finance you, Ally Bank will not finance you, but Capital One will, you know?
mhm,
So these lenders, they have different programs. One of them specializes in VA, the other one specializes in first-time home buyers, the other one specializes in down payment assistance. We'll get you grants, we'll get
mhm,
you everything. Depending on your situation, you need to go with your realtor's recommendation. And
mhm,
and and because of these nightmare situations. So,
mhm.
so that has been the biggest challenging, huh? For you guys just n
Yeah, just you need to be it's almost like because some people get nervous and I totally understand too because lenders and realtors can get a really bad rap out there based on like
Mhm.
being trustworthy or just you know what I mean and you're talking about really sensitive things sometimes like you're talking
Right.
about everybody's finances all these little tiny details because if anybody has been pre-approved underwriting feels like a cavity search and a half so
Right.
it's like it's just so uncomfortable. And so you really want to work with people that
Yeah,
are going to help you feel comfortable and not judge you the entire time. Like we are just here to help. So
yeah,
like it's not that like we want you to withhold anything. Like no, like give us everything so that way we know exactly what we need to do to make this still happen
yeah,
versus like I'm gonna hide stuff a little bit and hope that doesn't get found out because it will be found out. Underwriters are trolls. Like and I mean like it's an overcorrection from 2008 and like that's why we have such a stable market now is because of how intense they are with their underwriting
yeah.
process, but it's very uncomfortable. It's very uncomfortable for a lot of people.
So what advice do you have for dealing with difficult, clients in negotiations like these? Like, what do you tell them? Do you set the expectation from the beginning or as the issue arises?
I would say that I don't necessarily have a lot of difficult clients. I have difficult situations a lot. I have
Okay.
situations where they're using down payment assistance and they need all of their closing costs covered, and it's just not appealing in the market. So I set that expectation up front. I'm like, hey, like you know, in a perfect world, it doesn't matter whether you have down payment assistance or not because the seller is going to get the money regardless. but you have to think about it from a perspective of like who's going to be the strongest, most able to close. And notoriously, that's going to be conventional buyers or cash buyers, even FHA or VA, but FHA and VA also have their own stigmas. And so it's just kind of painting the picture of like the whole market, like not just you and your situation, but like how your offer is going to look to other sellers. And also putting in perspective of like the closing cost credit. Like sometimes you just need it and there's no ifs, ands, and buts about it. And we just got to get the right seller to agree to it.
Right.
But sometimes it's like, they're like, oh, why didn't they accept our offer? And it's like, well, you got to think about it. Like the seller is taking a pay cut. Like they have to credit you that. And if they can choose that versus not having to, they're going to not do it. And so, it's just kind of a numbers game at the end of the day. You can't give up because, again, when you don't compromise on the important things, you will get all the important things. But if you give up, then you're back to square one and you're probably going to miss out on the market even more because like the historical trends show that it's just going to continue to appreciate in value. It's not going to appreciate like 2020 and 2021. And sometimes it will dip, but over decades of research, it's just going like this. It's just kind of like this the entire time. So you just got to get your foot in the door. And once you get the foot in the door, that's the hardest part. Like first
Mm.
time home buyers, the other reason why I love working with them is because they are such hardworking, determined people, and it's their blood, sweat, and tears. Like that is the money that they're saving up, and it's really, really important to them. Not that a seller's equity isn't important, like a transplant seller where they're like selling and then buying. Of course, that's important too. But a lot of people don't have to dig into their pockets or their bank account to buy their second home. They usually just leverage their first home. So once you get your foot in the front door on that first home, your opportunities just open up for you. And so it's like just kind of getting over that mindset of like, well, I'm not getting exactly what I want. Like I'm not buying that house in Fontana. I'm not buying in Tuscany Hills. It's like, well, yeah, my first car wasn't a Lexus either, but you still got to get a first car.
It was a
And so it's like,
Toyota.
baby
Yeah.
steps, let's go.
Yeah. No, that's so when it comes to home buyers, because a lot of realtors do like working with home buyers, a lot of them people don't. But you said that you
Mhm.
love working with first time home buyers. So we need to have a lot of first time home buyers watching this video because we need to send you all the buyers there because I'll be doing the home inspection.
Exactly. And it'll be super thorough. You'll know
there,
exactly what you're getting.
there you go. Now let's talk about uh, lenders or realtors or buyers or even sellers. Have you encountered anything unethical that made you walk away, or how did you deal with the situation?
I had clients that I fired
Really?
because, yep, and the only clients I've ever fired because, and I've had very difficult situations. Like I've had situations where emotions are really high and like,
Mm,
buyers can get just kind of really aggravated and need to vent and stuff. And so with that, that's human and that's understandable. That's not
yeah.
something that I would fire somebody over. I almost fired that lender. Like I couldn't fire the lender because it's my client's job, but like that lender where we weren't sure, like that one was like, oh my God, but we're already so far, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
The only time I have ever fired a client was for ethical purposes. And they were just they weren't taking my advice. They weren't listening to me. They were being very rude and condescending when we would go to
Mm.
houses, like whether they had like certain religious stuff up on the walls. They would make comments that were really like bad, like very
Wow.
judgmental, and just really made me uncomfortable. It was just like, I don't want to represent people like this. Like, this is
So they
not
so
the
they were
type of person that I am.
they were just voicing their opinion about the seller's religious.
Yes.
Wow. Yeah, that's
Yes, and making comments based on that religious belief, how dirty their house was, and like all these just different little digs. And I was just like, I don't know what you're trying to do. Like, I don't know if you're trying to like make sure they have videotapes and say like how much you hate their house. Like, and it was just so ridiculous. Like, it was such a ridiculous and uncomfortable and unethical situation that I had to fire them. Like, we came out of that house and I was just feeling really icky. Like, I was like, I don't like that I'm representing these people. Like,
mm.
this is also my reputation at the line too. Like I
Yeah,
represent people who are ethical, or at least like they ain't telling me nothing like that, you know, like I'm doing it like from the goodness of my heart that I think these are great
yeah,
people, right? And so and they were just so out of their mind when it came to the market too. They were very political and like we're just like, oh, everybody who has taken a simple economics class can see that the market is going to crash and like all these different things. Everybody's stupid but us, basically, kind of mentality. And
yeah.
like, I just remember the house was in Moreno Valley, and I believe it was going for like 420,000 or something like that. It was like in the 400s range. And like, the wife comes out and she's like, I wouldn't pay more than 270,000 for that house. And I was like, well, that's for sure not gonna get accepted. And that's quite insulting. And so had to like talk to them, and they were basically like, well, let's write an aggressive offer and just see if they take it. And I had to literally ask them, I was like, what's your definition of aggressive? Because I don't think you and the seller's definition of a zero down payment, $200,000 off on listed price is an aggressive offer. I'm like trying to be as nice about it as possible. And then obviously it was
Oh my
like a hell
god.
no, don't even send that in. I was like, yeah, no, I know.
But I
And
guess
so and they were looking in between different states too. So they were like very
mm,
honest with me when it came to that. Like they were like, we're not sure if we're gonna settle in California, but we are looking in California just in case. And I was like, yeah, for sure. So after that situation, I thought that was it. I was like, California's not for them. They're gonna go
yeah.
somewhere else. And then a couple months later, they email me and they're like, we're back in town. We're ready to start looking. And so I sent an email back being like, I got to respectfully decline. I think that,
And these are the
it's just
same.
not going to match up. Like, I'm not going to give you the deal that you're looking for. Maybe there's another realtor out there that can help you, right? Like, not even saying like you guys are unrealistic, but just saying I'm not going to be able to give you what you're looking for in this market at the end of the day. And like I was so right to fire them, because then they
And
responded back like, "Oh, you're just a door opener. You don't know what you're talking about. Here's this
oh
YouTube video
wow.
to show why I'm right and you're wrong." It's just like ridiculous. I was like, "Okay, I'm so happy I fired them."
And these are the same people that were putting down the religious beliefs.
Yes. Yeah.
So
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 it's just
what do
the
you
whole
so what do you
thing.
do with those buyers? You know what I would do?
Huh?
I would send it to the realtor that I hate the most. Hey, I got a deal for you. I got a lead for you. That's what I would
No, I
do.
don't. I just don't want karma to come back to me, Like I was
No,
like,
it
y'all can
happens.
just figure it out.
It happens with us home inspectors too. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
whenever we come across a very, very difficult realtor, what we do
Mm-hmm.
is the most local ones. Hey, so and so is going to call you. So and so is going to call you. So and so is going to call you. So don't deal with her. She's horrible. Him or her doesn't matter. They're
Mm-hmm.
horrible, and so they're just like, yeah, we're busy, or we're just, hey, whoever wants it, just charge them a stupid amount of money, so they'll say no,
Right.
because
Mm-hmm.
I mean, whether you're a home inspector, lender, buyer, realtor, you're still a person, and you could be very, very
Mm-hmm.
difficult and condescending. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
So for you, that would be a deal breaker, right? To work with these people. You're like,
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
wow.
Oh yeah. That was the only time in like 4.5 years. That was the only time I had to fire a client.
And how did you feel?
At first I was like what awful people, like just trying to like make me feel bad. And I was like, you know what? That says way more about them than it does to me.
Yeah.
Because if you would have read our emails, mine was super respectful. Mine was very like, hey, I just don't think I'm the person for the job, right? Like, I wish you the best of luck on your endeavors. But I just don't think I'm going to be the one to give you guys what you need. And it was just this awful reaction. So you get shaken up after it, but over time, like I've definitely been like, no, I'm good. I'm okay.
Yeah.
I
No,
got
that's
enough people
good.
that love me that I'm okay.
No, and no, it's great that you did that, because that shows that many realtors should be doing the same thing. That
Mm-hmm.
shows that you do care about people. Maybe not about this particular couple, but you do care about the seller and how
Right?
their
Mm-hmm.
home is being criticized. It's like, wait a minute,
Mm-hmm.
you don't do that.
Yeah. Because there are people too
Despite,
at the end of the day.
yeah, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
gosh, I mean, it doesn't matter how they have their house. I've gone
Mm-hmm.
to, if you come to my house, you'll be like, Rico, are you sure you're a home inspector? Look at the dude. Why is this missing? Why doesn't your water heater? it's a tankless water heater, by the way. But
Nice.
you just don't know the situation of that person,
Mm-hmm.
right? You really
Exactly.
don't know. Um, it might be an elderly couple. Regardless,
Mm-hmm.
they don't have the means to fix their house. You don't say anything.
Exactly. Like, there's no reason to talk down. Like, it was like bullying. You know what I mean? Because there's
Yeah,
different things where it's like, oh, like the flooring needs to be replaced. Like, not an emotionally charged comment. You know what I mean?
right.
Like, just stating a fact about the house versus, wow, like they have all of this up. Like, you're supposed to take this down before showings. And if they practice this, their house wouldn't be this dirty and like all this stuff. It's just like, no, like, that's just mean. And like, when they would comment, like, anybody with a simple economics degree can see. And it's like, okay, so everybody's stupid but you kind of attitude. And it's just,
Yeah.
I don't like to work with people like that.
No, 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 and that's good, and that's good to know as well. Um, so what other steps do you take to protect a real estate transaction or just the interest of everybody?
So I make sure that we are doing everything from the get-go, like as soon as possible, because during the buyer's consultation and also while we're in the transaction, I remind them that there's timelines and there's contingencies. So, which I don't think gets talked about enough, the importance of a contingency and what they are and what they protect, how you can't just hold on to them. You do have to remove them to keep going in escrow. And so just kind of explaining that whole system and also just telling them, like, but look, like my lenders order the appraisal right away. You already got vetted before we got into escrow, so there's not going to be any surprises, like protecting them in that aspect. But also, as soon as we get an offer expected, I'm texting you. Like, I'm like, hey, like I need a home inspection at this day and time, or like
Yeah,
I need a home inspection at this address. When are you available? And just knowing as soon as possible, so that way, like, we know everything we need to know about the house before there's ever a moment that we're like on the cusp of needing to remove a contingency and we're unsure. Because I want to remove contingencies and protect that deposit when we're
right.
1,000% sure we're still moving forward and we're going to close. So a lot of realtors don't do that. I feel like they get your contingencies removed, and then you're in this like situation where your deposit's at jeopardy because it's like, oh well, you already signed off on everything, so if you cancel now you lose that money. And so kind of like forces them to like find any way to close,
Yeah,
versus I give the ownership and the decision to my buyers. Like, it's like, hey, like we got more than enough time. This is the condition of the house, this is what it appraised at, and this is where your loan is at. Like, are you still comfortable moving forward? And so that way they feel
mm,
comfortable and they know exactly what they're getting themselves into. And we remove contingencies at that point, not just because I need a commission at the end of the
right,
day.
right. No, no, that's good. That's
Hmm.
that's that's very good, and you keep everybody in the loop and everything. It's funny that you mentioned as soon as an offer gets accepted, you start texting everybody
Hmm.
because I know how all my realtors work. I know you're a texter. It doesn't matter if you
Hmm.
text me. If I'm driving, if I can't text, I'll call you, and I'm like,
Hmm.
I don't even know why I'm calling Christina. She's not gonna pick up.
I do sometimes.
sometimes, sometimes, but so has technology helped you in real estate?
Yes, I would say the way that it has helped me is DocuSign, because I have some clients that still like to hand sign. I'm like, oh god, like you kill so many trees in a transaction. Like, oh my god,
Yes,
it's so much paperwork. And then also videos. Like, I love videos. That's why I do my Instagram videos, and I just feel like
you need to do
I can
more.
put information out there. Thank you. I can put information out there so much more readily. And so I really like that part about real estate. I feel like it just helps bring down that wall and like helps people be able to connect with a professional in a way that like they feel safe enough to ask questions or get to know you first before they start working with you.
Yeah, that's awesome. With working with you, um, what are the tips that you have for anybody that's looking to buy in the current market, not just buy real
Mhm,
estate?
mhm.
What tips do you have for anybody that wants to buy in the current market?
So definitely having a buyer's consultation. So that way I can ask important questions and they can ask important questions, because what if, they're trying to buy in this market, but they just went from a W-2 job to a 1099 job. And like they thought, oh, I'm killing it at this 1099 job, I can totally buy a house, but they don't understand the employment history that's needed when it comes
Right.
to buying. So like we had this situation where, that exact same thing happened. Or someone who has mattress money and is trying to use that mattress money to buy a house, like they can't use that money. And like they don't understand that, like, yes, this could be your legitimate money that you just pull out of your paychecks because out of sight, out of mind, you save better like that, or maybe you don't trust bank institutions.
Right.
But an underwriter does not care, and like they need to be able to track your money. And so just having those conversations up front to be prepared, and then meeting with the
Mhm.
lender to understand what all of your numbers are, because say like
A
you want
lender
to.
that your realtor recommends.
Exactly. And because say like you're pre-approved for like $600,000, but you hate the monthly payment at 600,000. Like even though you can technically afford it, you're like, I'm gonna have to sell a kidney. I'm gonna have to like start working,
Yeah.
at the Spearmint Rhino at night or something, like just, like it's gonna be so uncomfortable. Once you get once you get
Spearmint
that
Rhino.
number.
You said Spearmint Rhino. That thing is so old. Is that thing still
Yeah.
open?
Yeah, there's one in Rialto. Well, I don't know actually if the one in Rialto is still open. I know there's one in the LA area though.
Oh my god. Okay.
And so then like it's like, okay, you're pre-approved for 600, but you love the monthly payment at 550 and under. So
Right.
then we have that conversation too, because what if you only know like I'm pre-approved for 600, you get your offer accepted, and then you're like, oh my God, that's my monthly payment? No, like that's an
Yeah.
absolutely not, you know what I mean? So having
Yes.
all of those conversations up front just to really give us a clear direction of where we're going is so essential.
That is so cool. So
Hmm.
so so let's wrap it up with this with you came from a very good educational background. Okay. And I know a lot of realtors that did the same thing. I know one of my good friends of mine, he's a town ferry coach, and he has a master's in philosophy. I mean, you have a degree in psychology. I have friends that never even went to what they graduated. They graduated in they have a master's degree in um, um, law, like criminal defense or something like that. They never got a job. They just went straight to real estate. What advice would you give to anybody that's, I don't say they're stuck, but it's considering a career change? And would
Hmm.
you recommend real estate?
Um, so I would say if you're thinking of a career change, you have to be self-motivated. Like if you're trying to go from your full-time job and you just want to have more time at home, that is not the person to go into real estate, because
Mm,
at the end of the day, when you're starting up any business, whether it's real estate, whether it's pool cleaning, because we also have a pool cleaning business, whether it's something on Etsy or anything like that, it's going to take a lot to get started. Like I didn't get paid for the first 6 months of being in real estate, and you need to be prepared for that. Like you need to understand that like it's going to be more work up front than probably your 9 to 5 job. But if you're doing it because you want to own something, you want to be accountable to yourself. Like for me, like I was like, the ceiling's unlimited. I can work as much as I want to.
yeah,
I can put in as much effort as I want to. I can spend my money where I want to spend it. That was like, yeah, like I already do like more than 40 hours a week for my employer. I know I can do more than 40 hours per week if I'm my employer,
right.
and just having like a different purpose behind it. I think when people want to go into real estate and they just kind of want an easy part-time job, it's not that. It's going to
No,
take so much time. Because then if you think about it, I was full-time and it took me 6 months to get paid. So if you're doing it part-time, it's going to take you even longer, because the
yes,
other thing is like you don't just get a deal just because you just got your license. Like you have to prove to people why they should work with you. And especially when you're brand new, that's hard. Like, cause
right.
it's like they can choose from all these other experienced realtors, which I'm not saying that new realtors are bad, but like you have to earn your clients.
Yes.
Like you should not feel entitled, like people are just going to come and want to work with you just because you're you. Like you really got to put in that effort, which I do no matter what. Like I did it day one and I do it 4.5 years later now. Like I don't
Yeah.
feel entitled to work with anybody. I want to earn that business. And so sometimes that's long days. Sometimes that's working on weekends. Sometimes that's getting up early or working late. I've been submitting offers at like 10 p.m. lately.
No,
And
it's
I'm like,
true.
man, these listing agents must hate me because
No,
it's
no,
like, I'm like at 7 in the morning, like, did you get my offer? And so, but it's only been like 8 hours or 12 or
yeah.
like, so,
No, it's there's a lot of truth to what you're saying, Christina, because there's a lot of businesses out there that you could
mhm,
get money in fast. I mean,
mhm,
I have a plumbing company, right? And it's been a struggle to get it going. But
mhm,
when money comes in, 90% went out or had to pay back for other stuff that I had to I had to pay plumbers, I had to pay the supply store, I had to pay my insurance, I had to pay everything. So
mhm.
so in
Exactly.
in real estate, yeah, you might not see your first check in 6 months, but it's just you.
Mhm,
Maybe pay yourself back on the gas that you spend. The overhead is so minimal compared to any other business, but you're
mhm,
working just as hard as any other industry.
mhm. Exactly. And also like I guess it would depend on what you're doing as a realtor, because if you have a big marketing overhead, you really want to make sure that you can even afford that overhead. Because there's
Right.
a lot of things you can do that's sweat equity. You can do open houses for free. You can do door knocking for free. You can do
Right.
flyers. You can network. You can do all these other things that are a lot less expensive. You can work with brokerages that offer a lot of training. Like that's why I love Keller Williams, because Keller Williams in general, like not just Riverside, but in general, is such a big focus on it is education, is making sure that realtors know what they're doing, so that way like when they are handling clients they're in really good hands. And so just
Mm.
making sure like you know what you're doing, because at the end of the day you are helping someone buy something that is the most expensive thing they're ever going to buy in their life. Doesn't matter if they're a first time home buyer or a fourth time home buyer, no matter what, they're never going to buy something that expensive, and it's literally the roof over their head. Like you
Yeah.
have to like think about it in that sense. So like when buyers are nervous or they have these fears, like they're very legitimate fears, especially if people are just money hungry and want to just get an escrow close and they have commission breath. It's like I would much rather just get a part-time job or do something else to make ends meet in the time period versus try and force somebody to close escrow. You know what I mean? It's like, it's not their problem that I have bills to pay, right? Like, that's my problem. So I'll figure it out at the end of the day. What I'm concerned with is making sure my clients are happy and they're comfortable and they're where they want to be at the end of the day.
And don't work with the realtor that has commission breath.
Yeah.
That is so cool. That is so cool. Christina, thank you so much for doing this for me. I love
Thank you for
interviewing
having
people.
me.
Of course.